Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. It is Jack Mack. We got JT here for another SEC preview, a little bit more than an SEC preview this week with a big game with Ohio State and Penn State this weekend. Really, the only big game. A little bit of a slow weekend elsewhere. But yeah, we are going to get into our bets. Each won our locks last week. Good to get on the board there. Hopefully, stay on a roll. But first, let's do a little bit of recap. That LSU Texas A&M game, and I've been high on LSU on this show. That was a shock to me. I mean, Marcel Reed. I mean, that guy is electric. Took over that game in the second half, hitting them with the LSU dance. I don't even know what you call it, but you know what I'm talking about. The dance they always do when they score. He was hitting it on them 4 or 5 times. It was ridiculous. But Texas A&M, hey, they may be for real after that slow or not looking so good early on. But what's your take on that game, JT?
Yeah, LSU came out pretty hot for the most part, kind of what you expected, especially last couple weeks with how they've been playing. I think everybody is pretty high on LSU. And, I kind of go back to what I said in our show. You looked at that line and you're like, LSU plus 1.5, Texas A&M's right back in this spot like that Missouri game where they're 1.5 to 2 point favorites at home. Seems to be their number at this point. You see that number with them at home, you might as well take it. But to your point, Wegman goes out. They bring in Marcel Reed, and he dominates, and you kind of look at it at this point. You're like, all right, well, they have a decision on their hands at this. They got to make a decision at this point. Do you ride it out with Marcel Reed the rest of the year? Or do you continue to give Wegman the opportunity to lead this team and be the quarterback for them? Texas A&M's found themselves in this spot sneakily at this point, I think very quietly, where they are competing for the SEC. Obviously, you have Tennessee and Georgia at the top there, but Texas A&M sitting right there, and it's going to be interesting over these next couple of weeks to see how it plays out between these three teams. With Tennessee and Georgia coming up here in a few weeks.
Absolutely. We're going to get into some talk about just the SEC and standings, potential SEC championship game. It's going to be chaotic, more chaotic than we've seen in a while, with the old SEC East and West. But yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. But you're right. They got a decision to make. I don't know if they continue to go the 2 quarterback system. I mean, it's been working for them. I mean, who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to do what they're doing. How do you pronounce his last name? The normal starter. Is it
Wegman?
Wegman. Yeah, I think they're still going to give him some looks. I mean, he's had some good moments this year. I mean, that Notre Dame game was terrible, but he's played better recently.
Dominated the Missouri game. Looked unbelievable in that Missouri game.
Yeah. So I think they'll go a 2 quarterback system here, but other big games, Indiana got the cover there for us with the under. I think their quarterback's coming back this week. But Penn State, good little segue into the Ohio State game this week. Penn State, they lose that Wisconsin game 10 times out of 10 in previous years. And it goes back to the USC game. I mean, coming back on the road, going across the country, them being able to do that is unlike any Penn State team in the past. They usually just fold over and die in any adverse position. So seeing a backup come in against Wisconsin, had some Trace McSorley vibes, running everywhere on that Wisconsin defense. I'm excited for this weekend, Penn State, Ohio State. It'll be interesting to see if Drew Haller plays. I mean, if he doesn't play well in the beginning, I'm sure we'll be hearing for that backup. So that's really the big game this week. I'm going to ride with Penn State as I have been. I just think, like I said, they're just a little bit of there's a different feel to a Penn State team this year. Defense got them rolling, pressure in the quarterback. JT, what is your thoughts on Penn State, Ohio State?
Yeah, honestly, I was watching that game. Wisconsin comes out a little hot. You're sitting there first half, you're like, wow, they're competing. This is, to your point, typical Penn State. James Franklin coach teams just don't show up in the big moment, but they answer the bell, and backup quarterback comes in and makes some plays, and they're able to escape Madison with a win there. And I think you look at this game, a lot of hype around this game, College game day. The Fox crew is going to be there as well. Beaver Stadium's going to be rocking. That place is going to be loud. I think you look at this game and it does come down to who's going to be the quarterback for Penn State. I would expect if Aller can play, he will be the starting quarterback for Penn State in this one. I think when you look at Ohio State in this, they're desperate. They got to get a win here. Ryan Day absolutely needs a win in this game. I would say the seat is probably getting a little hot at this point for him, especially coming off that Oregon loss. I think he loses this game. People kind of start to question, all right, is this the guy? Is he the coach? Especially when you look at this Ohio State team who Urban Meyer had said at the beginning of the year, this is the most talented Ohio State team he's seen in a very long time. I think for them that it's a must win. I think for Penn State, it's a can't lose, if you want to use that term. But especially with how the Big Ten rankings are starting to play out and with how well Indiana is playing, I think both of these teams absolutely need a win, and they got to hope for Indiana to lose here within the next couple of weeks to give them a shot at the Big Ten championship.
Yeah. Penn State, home game, this has got to be the year that they finally beat Ohio State, beat one of these teams. I mean, they lose every year. I was checking earlier. I mean, the last 4 or 5 years, 10-2 lost to Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, that's got to be one of the most frustrating as a fan. That's so frustrating. I mean, being that good and losing to just two teams every year, being on the outside looking in. This has got to be the year for their fans' sake that they break through, at least beat one of them.
It's also been kind of one of the biggest knocks on them for a long time. Is like, oh, Penn State, always 10-2, but never beats Ohio State and Michigan. Who else do they really play?
Exactly. I mean, if I would argue in the past, you put them in the SEC, they're 7-5 almost every year. They become like an Arkansas team where they're, playing in these fourth quarter wild games all the time, one score. So I agree. I think this has got to be the year that they, get some better quarterback play. I mean, that's really been the reason that they've lost. I mean, last year they were in the game. Drew Aller just could not make plays when he needed to make plays. It's first down, run up the middle, second down, run up the middle, 3rd and 7, slant pass. I mean, the most predictable plays, Penn State, I just feel like they're so predictable sometimes in these big spots. Now they've already been in a couple of big spots, and they've proven the ability to be a little bit different, unpredictable, go off schedule. So to your point, Drew Aller's got to play good, but if he doesn't play good, they see that they got someone behind him that can that's a wild card. So Ohio State on their side, they looked not good against Nebraska. I mean, Indiana beats them by 100, and they had to have a late drive there at home to win. You could hear the groans in the stadium. Just not a very fluid operation on Saturday. It reminds me of, Georgia in the past. They'll play down to their competition sometimes. We talked about the Missouri game, Kentucky earlier this year. They do that, and I feel like Ohio State is similar this year, playing to their level of competition, but it's not a good sign. I mean, they've already lost. They've used their mulligan. They need to. It'll be interesting to see, after a game like that, if we see them play like they did against Oregon, or if they play like they did against, last week against Nebraska. Because if they play like that, Penn State will win. But yeah, they're just a very topsy-turvy roller coaster team right now.
Yeah, no, I agree, and they got to get Quinshon Judkins going, man. It seems like he hasn't been much of a factor this year in these big games. So he's not putting up the numbers we saw at Ole Miss. Just not really been the same dynamic player at all, and you haven't really heard his name a lot. And I know they got all that talent at wide receiver, and you want to use that. You want to take the deep shots. But I think in a game like this, going in a hostile environment, in a game where, Penn State is going to want to make this a muck it up defensive game, especially if Aller doesn't end up playing. And I think if Aller even does end up playing, I think the style of game Penn State's going to want to play is put the ball on the ground with those two running backs and play defense, because those have been their strong suits all year. And I think that's the game Ohio State's going to have to play, and they're going to need Travion Henderson and Judkins to really take over this game and be factors because, like I said, it seems like they really haven't been for most of the year in these big games.
Yeah. And last point, Ryan Day, after that Nebraska game, calling his team soft. We can't run the football. And that's obvious. I mean, they got the two best running backs. When I saw this roster in the offseason, I mean, Judkins, Travion Henderson, I mean, it's ridiculous. The fact that they're not able to run the ball is crazy. It doesn't make any sense. So, again, Ryan Day is soft. He was born on third base, like John Harbaugh said. Can't get he's got all the talent in the world, and it's just something's off. So it may not be this week. I am going to pick Penn State to win, but not being able to run the football is not something they're just going to be able to fix overnight. Once they play into the playoff, Oregon again, these physical teams, I mean, that's going to be a serious issue. So that's a great point. I think Penn State will try to muck it up, but I just think Ryan Day, this is going to be the beginning of the end for the guy. I mean, if he loses this game, fans are not going to be happy, especially after that Oregon game, the way he handled the clock. It's put up or shut up time for Ryan Day.
Yeah, better have a game plan for Tyler Warren too. You want to slow down that Penn State offense, find a way to stop him.
What's your pick in this game?
I think I'm going to go with the under 45.5 in this game. I think Penn State is going to control this game for the most part, and I don't think they want this game to turn into a shootout. I don't think either of their quarterbacks, Aller or the other, the backup, is going to be the guy that's going to come in and be able to compete in a shootout with this Ohio State team through the air. So for me, especially because I do think Penn State is going to win this game, I'm going to take the under, maybe 24-20, 24-17, something like that, something in that range. I think that's the type of game we're going to look at here.
Yeah, it's hard to picture a shootout in Beaver Stadium.
No.
All those crazy. So
we win the ball. That's the way it's been for the last 2 decades, right?
Right. But more on that note, let's talk a little bit of these conference races right now. I mean, got some chaos with the SEC, Big Ten, got some people we didn't expect. Indiana at the top of the Big Ten, and Indiana and Oregon. SEC, you got Texas A&M. So we'll start with the Big Ten. I mean, Oregon seems like they've already kind of gotten their spot, unless they get upset here at some point in the Big Ten title game. It's really going to come down to this Penn State, Ohio State game. Indiana will be playing Ohio State soon. So JT, what are your thoughts kind of on how this Big Ten race shapes out as we head into the last few weeks?
The way I look at it, I really think, in my opinion, this is Oregon's division, or this is Oregon's conference to lose at the moment. Let me pull up their schedule real quick. I'd just like to see who they have remaining here. Because to your point, Indiana still has to play Ohio State. There'll be a lot riding on that game. And from what I can tell,
that's it.
Oregon is really they don't really play anybody else for the rest of the year. Michigan at Michigan, Maryland, Wisconsin in Madison, and then they got Washington to close the year out. So I really think this is their conference to lose at this point. I think you lose one of those games for them would be detrimental, because I think their only big win on the schedule is Ohio State. So, I think the way it's kind of shaping out, they're in the driver's seat here. Indiana's been a really pleasant surprise. It's been awesome to see Frank Cignetti go up there and bring relevance back to Indiana. And College Game Day was awesome there last week. That was really cool to see. So, I think this game between Penn State and Ohio State is going to control a lot. Obviously, Ohio State loses, you can pretty much count them out. And then if Penn State loses, then, that obviously they need to hope for an Indiana loss somewhere along the way. just to be able to sneak in. I think if they lose this game, they're pretty much done
Yeah.
for the most part, actually. So, Ohio State obviously needs to win. They need to beat Indiana, and then control. They're kind of in control of their own destiny at this point.
Yeah, the way I see it shaking out, obviously Oregon's there. I look at that game against Ohio State, Indiana. That's on the 23rd, second to last week of the season. Signetti in a matchup against Ryan Day. I like Signetti's odds. I know Ohio State is much more talented, but I mean, coaching. I mean, how could you? I mean, it's hard to understate how impressive being able to turn Indiana around in 1 year and beat, for example, Nebraska 60-7. I mean, it's unbelievable the turnaround that they've had. He's a great coach. And as he said before he started this year, he wins. Google. And I like that matchup with Indiana, Ohio State. And this game's close in the fourth quarter. Indiana will win. I mean, Signetti is a better coach. That's the truth. And so I look to that game, and even if Indiana loses, and if Penn State wins this game, it's interesting to see how the tiebreaker is. But I expect Penn State to win this game. I expect Ohio State. Let's just say they win against Indiana, then they all got one loss, Penn State and Indiana. So it'll come down to a tiebreaker. And to your point, we were talking before the show. I think there's some score differential involved. So who knows? Some of these Indiana 60-7 wins may help them out at the end.
Yeah. I actually just pulled up the tweet I was looking at earlier. There is a scenario where Oregon is number 1 in the country and undefeated and still would not go to the Big Ten championship. So if Penn State and Indiana both beat Ohio State and run the table, then these two teams would meet. Those two teams would be in the Big Ten championship, and number 1 Oregon would miss out. It's due to the tiebreaker margin of victory. So Oregon beat Ohio State by 1 point. So if Penn State and Indiana beat Ohio State by more than 1, it would be those two. So Interesting rule they have set up there, margin of victory coming in for the tiebreaker.
That is odd. Obviously, that would be a nightmare scenario for Oregon. But either way, I mean, it looks like there's going to be 3 teams. I think there's going to be 3 teams in the playoff. It may not be the worst thing in the world. And I was talking about this earlier when Georgia lost to Bama. I mean, if you don't make the SEC championship game, don't make the Big Ten, you got 1 loss, maybe 2. I mean, you're still going to be in the playoff. You don't have to play that extra game, get rested for the games that really matter. I know you want to win your conference, but you'd rather win the Natty. At least, I mean, I would. So, going to be interesting to see how these new tiebreakers impact. But to kind of segue that into the SEC, we got a similar situation there with Georgia. I saw something earlier. They could be the number 1 team in the country if they went out and not be in the SEC championship game. With if Texas A&M wins, and I guess the other team would be if Texas A&M wins out.
Texas and Tennessee are in there as well.
Tennessee, yeah. But I saw a scenario where, Georgia could be number 1 team in the country and still not be in the SEC championship game. That is crazy. But, everything kind of got thrown into flux with that Georgia win against Texas. Got a lot of teams with 1 loss. So Texas A&M still looking pretty at the top of the division. It's crazy to me that they got the schedule that they did. I mean, as lax of a SEC schedule as you could have. But Nussmeier, I looked to LSU before that game for them to kind of cause some chaos, beat Alabama later this year. But, with Garrett Nussmeier's decision-making in that game, he threw himself out of the Heisman and threw his team out of, a real shot with that loss. So really 2 semifinal games, the way I look at it. You got Georgia, Tennessee in the end of November, and then you got Texas A&M and Texas, the last game of the season. The way I look at it, pretty much the winner of those games will be in the SEC championship. Tennessee wins, they're in with the head-to-head, and same thing in that Texas A&M game. Going to be very interesting to see as things unfold. JT, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that's gonna unfold here within the next couple of weeks. Obviously, Tennessee, Georgia being up first, that game is going to be an interesting one for sure. Tennessee, obviously, I don't. I think the last time they won in Athens was um, so
Juwan Jennings.
Juwan Jennings on a Hail Mary. Yeah, I think, which was crazy enough, almost 10 years ago. So I haven't really had much success. I was at the last game when Tennessee walked in there as the number one team in the country. When don't think they really should have been, but Kirby is an underdog, a home underdog, took them down, and it really wasn't a game at that point. And so, for at least from my perspective, that game, I look at that, and while I'm optimistic, I'm cautiously optimistic. So I think that game is going to come down to the wire there, and that's going to control pretty much who's in one spot. And then, like to your point, Texas Tech and Texas are going to battle there at the end of the year, and that'll control kind of who is going to be in the SEC championship. So you can kind of count it as we're looking at Tennessee, Texas, Texas A&M, or we'll see another rematch between Georgia and Texas, which would be, I think everybody would like to see that again. And then Georgia, Texas A&M could also be a possibility. But Tennessee's got to beat Kentucky this week.
Yep.
If we're going to segue into that. And we've pretty much dominated Kentucky for a very long time at Tennessee. We kind of look at Kentucky as like, we look at Vandy one way, and we also look at Kentucky one way, and they're almost equal. We have had our losses against Kentucky. It's not been many. Pretty much dominated the last 5 or 6 years with them. Even when they came in, I think it was 2019, and they were number 14. I think they might have been even lower than that. We still crushed them. Home game at Neyland, they got on the blackout jerseys. So definitely a jersey bet there. I usually don't bet on my own team, but if you're into jersey bets, that's a good uniform bet right there. So I think, looking at this game, I'm pretty sure Tennessee's 15.5-point favorites going into this one. 16 now. Okay. Well, I look at this game, and I really think Tennessee's going to come out and dominate this one. Who's Kentucky's quarterback? Who's the guy came from Georgia?
Brock Vandagriff.
Vandagriff, yeah.
I
don't have much faith in him. Obviously, Kentucky does have a big win under their belt with a win under Ole Miss at Ole Miss. I think their defense is pretty solid for the most part. I think they have a solid defense, but their offense is non-existent. I think coming into this game against one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best defense in the country. Little bias there, but I think Vandagriff's really going to struggle in this environment, and that place is going to be bonkers again. It always is. And coming into, and obviously Tennessee needs a win. They know what they need to focus on to get to that Georgia game. So I think Tennessee's going to come out and dominate this game, and I think they'll cover that 15.5-point spread. 5-2 against the spread this year is a favorite. So solid track record there so far.
Yeah, my first thought in that game is Tennessee all the way, but Kentucky they've been as up and down. They've looked great at times, beating Ole Miss. Defense played great against Georgia, but last week looked about as bad as you could, getting dog walked by the Gators, which I didn't think you could still get dog walked by the Gators in 2024. But hey, they find a way to do it. So yeah, Kentucky coming in, everything says Tennessee, but something in the back of my mind says, Kentucky, like you said, they don't like each other. I think this game may not be close the whole game, but I think it will be closer in the first half than people think. Kentucky, looking at their games this year, they haven't been great, but they haven't put really two terrible performances back to back. Usually they'll play bad and they'll rebound and have a little bit of a better showing. And now they're not great. They still got a bad quarterback. I love Brock Vandagriff, but he's not very good. Not much flavor on offense, very predictable, kind of what I was talking about with Penn State. But they have a defense that can make things difficult if they're able to stop the run with Dylan Sampson in the beginning of the game. Who knows? But everything tells me, Tennessee by 100. But again, Kentucky's a weird team, and they've been playing their best football on the road. And this game is in Neyland, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I probably won't touch this game, but I lean under, and I lean Kentucky, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think the other part is Tennessee has started pretty slow on offense in these first halves. Pretty much, I mean, almost all these games for the most part. I think, the hope is they found something in the second half of that Bama game. Something seemed to click. I think for Nico, it's starting to click a little bit more. I think he's realizing there's plays to be made with his legs. And he made those in the second half of that Alabama game. And I think he needs to continue to make those plays with his legs instead of trying to force these balls downfield and making some of these throws where he's throwing into double coverage and just kind of making those freshman mistakes that come with, the growing pains that come with being a freshman quarterback in the SEC. So the hope there is, like I said, I think you still lean on Dylan Sampson. And then you look at Nico and you say, hey, make the plays with your legs when it's there, make some off-schedule plays like he did in that Alabama game, and then find Deontay Thornton, man. The guy has been a big play machine for them. I think every time they're able to get him the ball downfield, something seems to spark. And on that throw that Nico made rolling to his right, he throws a absolute dime to Deontay Thornton right down the right sideline there in that Alabama game, and they're off and running after that. So I think there's plays to be made, and I think you got to find that guy.
Is Thornton the guy? Some Tennessee wide receiver reminds me of, was the Young Thug wide receiver? What was his name? He was on the Saints.
Preston Williams.
Preston Williams reminds me. Is that either him or is that number one with the little bit of a dread? Yeah. He reminds me of him.
Yep.
He can be electric. Yeah, he was electric in the beginning of the season. You're right, and they haven't been, targeting him as much. I know just the passing game in general has been off a little bit, but yeah, I look to definitely get him involved more because he's definitely their best receiver out of the games I've watched. So rivalry week, JT thinks they'll take care of business at a night game.
Yes, it is 7:45.
Man, yeah, I'm liking Kentucky less and less. But again, I didn't like him in the Ole Miss game, and they and they turned out and played good. So we shall see. It's the SEC, right? So next we get into smaller business, not going to be a huge deal. But Florida, Georgia this weekend in Jacksonville. We'll show up quick, have some fun, tailgate, and be back.
World's largest cocktail party.
Yeah, it's been fun here recently. Not much adversity in a while. I can't really remember the last time. Kyle Trask, Dan Mullen. It's been a while since Florida has won against Georgia. Really, that's the last game that Georgia has lost to anybody but Bama. And I keep throwing that stat out, but it's amazing. I mean, to me, it's just so amazing. 5 years and they've not lost to anyone but Bama. So yeah, we'll go take care of little brother here this weekend. I don't think this freshman quarterback is going to break 200 yards. DJ Lagway, Shelton's telling me all about him. How he can run. He's this. He's that. He's the next coming. But it's a rookie quarterback, Anthony Richardson. I heard a lot of similar things about him, and go watch the highlights of that Georgia-Florida game. I mean, he had like 2 pick sixes in the first half. Freshman QBs do not fare well against the Dogs. So I expect Georgia to really flex their muscle here. They got the pass rush going against Texas. And let me tell you, Florida's offensive line is not Texas' offensive line. So Jalen Walker, I expect him and Mykel Williams to run into each other about 4 or 5 times meeting the quarterback. So I expect score prediction 41-10 Dogs. Maybe a little biased, but JT, what do you think?
I'm looking at the spread now, and 16.5 doesn't seem like enough, in my opinion. I think this could also become kind of leave at halftime kind of deal and just go back to the cocktail party. Maybe just go watch it at the tailgate for the rest of the, turn it on, leave it on in the background just in case anything interesting happens. But no, I think this game is kind of, this is going to be the end for Napier. This is it right here. I think this is going to be the final straw. I think he's got to show up in this game, and that team has to compete for him to continue to be the head coach of this football team. But yeah, I'm on the train of, I think Georgia dominates this game. I think they keep their foot on the gas, and to your point, I think they found something in that Texas game to be like, all right, this is who we really are. This is Georgia football. Let's turn it on. Now's the time to turn it on. So especially when you're late in October, you're getting into November, it's time to get going if you're a top team in the country. So yeah, I think this is gonna be a dog walking.
Yeah,
Gator walking.
Gator walk. That's right. Put those gators on a leash. See how they like it. But Georgia, you're right. They're trending, but they showed that earlier in the year. I know everyone forgets. No one wants to talk about it, but Georgia beat Clemson 41-3. Clemson's a wagon right now, and the next week they don't look so good. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Georgia plays like they did against Kentucky this weekend. But I don't think they're going to lose. Just saying that I need to see it 2 weeks in a row to see it solidified and all that. So consistency is, I'm sure, what Kirby's been preaching over the bye week. So I expect to see a similar performance, but who knows? It's Florida, Georgia. They could stick around in the first half, but by no means will this be within 2 scores. So Georgia will dominate. And Billy Napier, I would think you're right with him potentially getting fired, but I don't know, man. These Florida fans, like they got the big win against Kentucky, and now everything's all okay.
I think they'll let him write it out.
We bought him some time.
Yeah. I think they'll let him write it out till the end of the year. But I think if you get dominant, if they get dog walked in this game, I think the writing starts. There's writing on the wall at that point, in my opinion. Maybe they let him go to the end of the year, but I think the donors are going to start calling for a change of guard down there.
Their next 3 games, JT.
Oh.
They play Georgia. They go to Austin, and then they come home and play LSU.
Yeah.
They have to win, in my opinion. I mean, to save it. Oh, and then after that, they play Ole Miss. Oh my goodness, they got to win, and then they play Florida State. Look, he's gone.
There's a whole essay on the wall at this point now.
The guy's gone. Billy Napier's gone. I mean, there's not even a point to talk about it. I mean, he's got to win 2 of those games.
At least.
If Florida doesn't get to a bowl this year, he's gone. So
at least 2. He's got to win at least 2.
Yeah, so I think they'll let him ride at the end of the season. I hope. Who knows? Maybe he'll win a couple, and Georgia, Tennessee will get lucky and get to see him again next year. Who knows? We'll take him as long as we can keep him. But
yeah.
Again, the biggest mistake that Florida ever made was firing Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen beat the Georgia Bulldogs, and they were in the SEC championship. It just doesn't make any sense, just thinking back to that they would fire him.
They can always call up Urban.
They could. That would be DEFCON 9 for me. I would be officially scared of Florida if that happened, for sure. I mean, Urban Meyer, they're back like that, and do you feel like that? I mean, Urban Meyer, in my opinion,
that'd be a Florida thing to do, is hire that guy.
Oh, 100%. And
I'm sure he'd be willing to run it back, but I definitely wouldn't want to see him coaching that team.
No.
I don't know. He kind of feels like one of those guys that doesn't want to deal with the whole NIL thing. He's kind of, feels like it's kind of outgrown him at this point, but I could be wrong.
Florida can throw a lot of money at him, I bet. But we'll see. Again, I think Florida we'll just see how this Saturday goes. I'll just leave it at that. But I don't see Billy making it to Christmas. So finally, heading into our locker up segment, me and JT finally, first time on the show, both got our picks correct. We are Penn State, and then we got a sweat with that Indiana under boat.
Couple wins could have parlayed them.
That's right. That's right. So this week, JT, how about you start? Are you ready? You want me to start it off?
Start it off. I'm searching here.
Well,
actually, no. I got mine.
Okay.
I got mine. Yeah, I mentioned at the beginning of the show. I've gone this route before, and I will do it again. Penn State unders. Give me the under 45. You know, if you want to buy the half, go ahead and buy the half, under 45.5. Like I said, I think this game is 24-20, which is, I understand that is a sweat. Hopefully more like 24-17, 20-17, you know, something in that range. But I think Penn State is going to want to muck this game up, make it a quick game, run the football, play defense, keep the ball out of Ohio State's hands. Give me the under 45.5 in this game.
Yes. I was thinking about that myself. What I'm going to pick here, man, I am torn between. I want to ride the Indiana wagon until it's gone.
So the wheels fall off. 7-1 against the spread this year. That's impressive.
You know who also is 7-1 against the spread?
Are you going to tell me the number 21 team in the country?
I am not. I am going to give you the number 11 team in the country, Clemson Tigers.
I was going to say Army.
Oh, yeah, we got a couple teams that are hot right now. But yeah, Clemson, again, they're averaging 50 since that Georgia game. They play Louisville at home at night, -11. I think they do it again. I mean, Louisville, I know they hung with Miami, but their offense cannot – Clemson's defense is not Miami's defense. Clemson's defense is not going to allow 40 points to Louisville at home at night.
No. And
Clemson, on the other hand, they will score – I want to say 40, but, I mean, they'll at least score 35. So this is just a numbers game for me. I mean, Clemson, they score this amount of points every week. And Louisville, I just don't think they can keep up. So I will take the Clemson Tigers -11.
Should we look up just for the fun of it, you know? Let's see what a parlay is going to pay out on those two.
Yeah.
You know? Bet them, parlay them. Let's see here. Let's see.
And of course, yeah, you guys can go bet this on BetUS.
Oh yeah, BetUS. Odds on a parlay for Clemson and the under 45. What time is that Clemson game at?
Night, 7:30.
7:30. Clemson -10.5. You're looking at a plus 260.
We shall take it. We will take it.
Plus 260. I just bet it on accident, so I'm riding.
We're live. Hey, we're going to keep the hot streak going. 2-0 last week. Gonna keep the trend going. There's one other thing I was going to say. I was checking through my notes here. Never mind. I was going to say I like the Army game.
But, put it in your head. There you go.
Yeah. Once you put it in my head, you got to ride the wagons. I mean,
no, you know, we support our troops here. So
we do. We tried to support our troops last week. Our friend group taking Navy. A little disappointed. Yeah. They hung in there for a little bit, but I mean,
moment was just a bit too big for the midshipmen in that one. I think the Golden Domes kind of got to them there a little bit. They look a little shaky. Too many turnovers. Can't turn the ball over.
Can't do it. But hey,
not when you're on the triple option.
That's right. That is it for us this week. Thanks for watching High Top Sports Georgia. Best of luck to everybody on their best this week. Again, I have Clemson Tigers. He's got the
under in the Penn State game, under
under
45.
Under Penn State. And we will see you next week. Go Dogs.
Go Vols.